Most folks think the worst part of war is the battles, the gunfire, the cannons, the screaming. But no, that ain't it. Not by a long shot. See, marching into a fight with a rifle in your hand, at least you got some say in what happens next. But what happens after the battle? That's the part they don't put in the history books. The things I seen, the things I heard, some of them still haunt me. So pull up a seat by the fire, and I'll tell you the real stories of the Civil War, the ones they don't teach in school. We all had our reasons for fighting. Some fought for the Union, some for the Confederacy, but most of us, we fought 'cause we had no choice. The war dragged on for 4 bloody years, and more than 600,000 men died, but not all of them fell to bullets. You see, to keep the armies moving, men like me had to endure things worse than any battlefield. The hunger, the sickness, the wounds no doctor could fix. But the worst part, some of us saw things no man ought to see. So let me tell you about some of the worst jobs in this war, the kind that make you wish you were back on the battlefield, rifle in hand. Now, if you got shot in battle, you might think you were lucky to be alive. But let me tell you, the worst part was what came next. Doctors? They weren't doctors, they were butchers. No clean tools, no washed hands, just a dull saw and a strong stomach, and painkillers? Heh, unless you were an officer, the best you got was a shot of whiskey and a bullet to bite down on. I watched men hold their own arms while the surgeon cut it clean off. Sawbones moving so fast they didn't even stop to wipe the blood off the blade. The screaming never stopped, and when it did, that meant the fella didn't make it. If you ever get to thinking your doctor's got rough hands, just be glad he ain't got a sawing other one. I don't put much stock in ghost stories, but I'll tell you this, there are some places a man shouldn't walk alone. Antietam, September 1862. The bloodiest single day in American history. Over 22,000 men, dead or wounded. After the fighting stopped, I was on burial duty. The ground was thick with blood, bodies piled up like firewood, and that's when we started seeing them. Figures in the fog, they'd just stand there, staring, no sound, no movement, just there. Then the moment we got close, gone. I wasn't the only one who saw 'em. I heard men whispering about watching friends who had already died walking through the smoke at night. Some men swore the dead were still marching, still fighting, even after they'd been buried. Maybe it was just our minds playing tricks. Or maybe some men never left that field. Now, an enemy in front of you? You can shoot him, but an enemy beside you? That's a different kind of danger. See, both sides had spies hidden in their ranks. Looked just like us, talked like us, fought like us. But at night, they were slipping off into the dark, sending information right into enemy hands. I knew a fella, real friendly sort, until one day he was just gone. Turns out he was a Confederate spy, been feeding them our movements for weeks. They caught him a few towns over, hanging from a tree. No trial, no last words, just a noose and a short drop. That's the thing about war. Trust the wrong man, and you don't get to make that mistake twice. Now, some men deserted. I get it. War breaks a man, but what about the ones who didn't run, but still disappeared? We'd go to sleep with 10 men in a tent and wake up with 9. No footprints, no struggle, just gone. Some blamed the rebels, saying they were sneaking into camp and snatching men out of their beds. Others swore it was something else, something that didn't leave tracks. After a while, we just stopped asking. Some men just weren't meant to come home. You still here? You got grit, I'll give you that. Most folks would have turned away by now, but if you want to hear more, I've got stories, the kind that settle in your bones and don't leave. There was a tactic, they don't talk about it much, not in the clean versions of history. When you needed to hold a line and there weren't enough men, they'd stack the dead, pile 'em up, use their bodies as cover, a human wall. I seen it with my own eyes. The livets hid behind the fallen, firing over men they'd fought beside just hours earlier, some still breathing, groaning, crying for help. But we had to shoot. We had to live. That's war for you. Turns friends into shields and memories into regrets. I remember this boy. Couldn't have been more than 12. Drummer for our unit. Bright eyes, soft-spoken, carried more courage in him than most men twice his age. He was hit in the leg during a retreat, screamed for help. I wanted to go back. We all did. But the captain ordered us to keep moving. Later that night, I crept back through the brush, heart in my throat. Found him propped against a tree, dead still, but not from the wound. His drum was beside him and scrawled in the dirt with a stick. I didn't run. I don't cry easy, but that night I did. They call it PTSD now, shell shock. But back then, we didn't have words for it, just broken men. Fellas who flinched at a bird call, who screamed at shadows. I knew a man who bayoneted a tree because he thought it was wearing gray. Another jumped into a river trying to swim home. We didn't understand. We just said they'd lost their nerve and sent 'em home, or worse, kept 'em on the line thinking they'd snap out of it. But you don't just walk away from what we saw. It stays, sometimes quiet, sometimes not. You ever seen a man frozen stiff, still holding his rifle? I have. Winter came hard that year. One night, the cold hit so fast, some men didn't even wake up, just stopped breathing in their sleep. We found one boy sitting against a tree, his eyes open like he was still watching the woods. I touched his coat. It shattered like glass, ice running through the threads. Even the blood froze where it had spilled. And yet we still marched the next morning, over frost-covered corpses, praying we wouldn't join them. We all wrote letters. Most never made it home. Some were burned, some used for kindling, but there was one letter I still remember. A friend of mine, Charlie, wrote to his wife every night. He didn't know she'd died of fever back home the month after he left. He just kept writing. After he was shot at Petersburg, I found the letters in his pack. Pages and pages, talking about dreams, about coming home, about naming their unborn child. I carried those letters for years. One day, I buried them in Virginia soil. Figured they deserved peace, even if he didn't get it. You think bullet wounds are the worst? Nah. Try a man hit point blank by a cannonball. I saw one once, or what was left. They said he was smiling right before it hit. Next second, he didn't have a face, just smoke, blood, and silence. I remember staring frozen. My captain shouted at me to keep moving, but all I could see was the blood steaming on the cold ground. That's the moment I knew I wasn't leaving this war the same man I came in as. When the war ended, folks cheered. Bells rang, parades rolled through the cities, but not for us. We came back to empty towns, broken homes, and cold stares. The war was over for them, but we were still fighting it, in our heads, in our dreams. There were no medals, no welcome, just silence. They forgot us before the blood had even dried. I've outlived most of the men I fought beside, buried too many, forgotten more names than I care to admit. But I remember the feeling, the fear, the noise, the silence after. So when you hear about glory and flags, remember this. We didn't fight for statues. We fought for each other, for one more sunrise, for the chance to go home. And now that I've told you, maybe those stories won't die with me. If you're still listening, thank you, not just for me, but for the boys who never got to tell their story.